let's talk about Nick Reiner and what would possess him to murder or experience all these psychological issues that his parents have had trouble with him since early childhood. For those of you that may not know, Nick Reiner was arrested for allegedly murdering his father, Rob Reiner, and his father's wife, Michelle. Now, if we take a look at his chart, you notice that he has moon in Maga nakshatra, which is located in Leo. Individuals with moon in Maga nakshatra often experience rejection, negligence, emotional displacement early on in life, which can make it really difficult for them to feel confident in expressing their emotions and their identity. There's often like this really deep sensitivity and wound around feeling seen, being chosen, being valued. And if we look even further, I saw that he's in his moon Mahadasha. And so this activates his natal moon. It also activates all planets in moon ruled nakshatras. And this is going to create a theme of emotional memory, attachment patterns, subconscious conditioning. You know, this period will really intensify unresolved emotions, emotional themes, I should say, from earlier on in his life. Now, there is a nakshatra exchange between Moon and Ketu. Moon is in Maga, ruled by Ketu. Ketu is in Rohini, which is ruled by Moon. So this exchange is really significant. You know, it's telling me that there is something uncomfortable going on with respect to his emotional state, his emotional mind. Ketu in Rohini is particularly uncomfortable in that nakshatra. Rohini means the red one. It symbolizes passion, sensuality, growth, abundance, desire for emotional nourishment, and love. And so mythologically, Rohini was Chandra's, meaning the moon's favorite wife among the 27 nakshatras, or I should say the 27 wives. And this myth often manifests with Ketu in Rohini, manifests feelings of not receiving enough love, jealousy, emotional comparison, competition for affection, because Ketu represents past life conditioning, detachment, separation, and loss. Its placement in Rohini suggests that this is a karmic experience involving a lot of emotional deprivation, favoritism, and abandonment. So with this Moon Ketu exchange, there's this strong indication of someone who is experiencing emotional neglect, jealousy dynamics, competition for love, and for validation. Part of this stems from his past life experiences. Notice that he has Saturn retrograde in the 7th house from his moon. This tells me about emotional insecurity. Natal Saturn retrograde being placed there, you know, it's very critical for emotional interpretation, because Saturn here indicates that this is someone with deep emotional insecurity, fear of intimacy and vulnerability, someone who's dealing with like challenges and difficulties in trusting emotional bonds, trusting his emotional bonds with other people. Many people don't realize, but Saturn retrograde will really intensify this, making this like a repeated pattern. You know, even when Saturn being on retrograde, it does act like it's on steroids, right? So there could be this recurrent emotional fears, suppressed emotional expression, emotional coldness in relationships, periods of depression, and periods of emotional withdrawal. It could also make someone very self-sabotaging, self-destructive. Notice that he has Venus in Ashlesha. This is a very complicated place for Venus. Now, Venus naturally being in the 12th house is, you know, on the surface level, a really nice place, right? You know, it could indicate compassion and sacrifice and love. However, being that Venus is in the nakshatra of Ashlesha, Ashlesha represents or symbolizes, by the coiled serpent. That means, and it can manifest in ways where, you know, there's a suffocating attachment style with respect to love and relationships. There could be jealousy, there could be possessiveness, there could be manipulation, controlling expressions of love, and there could be a lot of difficulty in releasing emotional bonds with others. Let's move even further. Notice how he has Mars in Chitra nakshatra, which is in Virgo, right? The last few degrees of Virgo. Here it indicates someone who has a fascination with weapons, tools, sharp objects, you know, precision-driven aggression, someone who has like a desire to assert control through force, through intensity, right? It also aspects, if you look, it also aspects his natal sun, 27 degrees in Leo, natal Venus, 27 degrees in Cancer. And so this tells me there's aggression towards the father, which is Sun, conflict with women, which is Venus. And it also tells me that there could be, sometimes really intense expression of anger and desire going on in this person's life. Because Sun and Venus are aspecting each other all by degree, it creates a lot of tension, mutually reinforcing this emotional volatility. All right, notice that Jupiter is it Jupiter square? Yeah, his Jupiter squaring to Neptune and Uranus. Okay, this also tells me that he has some distorted belief system, some ideological extremism, someone who has difficulty in discerning truth from fantasy, someone who will have like a sudden shift in moral and ethical compass, someone who will have a shift in faith. So like all of a sudden they're like, oh yes, I love God, I believe in God, I believe in being a good person, and then something could trigger that and they become a completely different person, because this will inflate emotional narratives. It will, in their mind, it will justify the extreme behavior even if it's not consciously integrated. You get what I'm saying? So here we're seeing like this karmic emotional pattern happening, but this is rooted in early deprivation, jealousy, and insecurities when he is young, and now it's being reactivated through his moon Mahadasha. I think I also want to add is the fact that his Neptune retrograde and Uranus retrograde are stationed in the 5th house. Now when a planet is retrograde, there's a lot more of inner stuff going on, not so much outer stuff. So the energy just completely builds up within themselves, and it's trining trining Leo, meaning it's aspecting his moon, right? Not a tight degree, but it's a wide orb degree. And trines means that something is able to happen much easier. And I find that Neptune and Uranus do aspect the 5th and 9th house from itself. Being that Neptune and Uranus are there in the 5th house, it tells me that he's someone who has trouble with expression. But when he does express himself, it's like he's not thinking it through. And it tells me that he expresses himself under false pretenses, but he does it randomly, sporadically, right? So his behavior, like he'll be cool for a few days and all of a sudden he does something that's just very unexpected or maybe even out of character, right? It'll make him erratic. So on the day that Rob Reiner and Michelle were murdered, so on the day of the murder of Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle, this is what was happening in Nick's natal chart. So Jupiter is retrograde 29 degrees in Gemini. Jupiter amplifies our belief systems internally, right? It operates through mental narratives, rationalization, split thinking, but it also can justify ideas through logic. So keep that in mind. There was a trine between Jupiter retrograde and his natal Pluto, right? This is a powerful aspect because he's getting in his mind psychological empowerment, extremism in his belief system, feeling that he's going to do something that is warranted. He's about to do something that's warranted that he feels is justified. Why? Because Pluto being in Libra has to do with relationships and has to do with power struggles, and him wanting to, him being obsessed with fairness, with control, with betrayal, with, wanting to correct a relationship or justify something, in his mind, or something that he felt was being played out in his relationship dynamics. Notice how transit Jupiter was also in a quincunx with natal Sun in Scorpio. Remember, Sun could represent the father, and this is a death and rebirth dream. Being that it was in Gandanta, means that this is some kind of crisis taking place in this person's life. He's under like some kind of psychological strain, some kind of urgency, making him to act out in a very crazy, wild, unexpected, unpredictable manner. At the same token, Jupiter retrograde was squaring his natal Mars. So making him very courageous to do something that maybe he didn't feel the courage, or he felt he felt restrained to do, giving him full on like open doors to do something that would be out of character, or we would think would be out of character, maybe for you and me, right? Also notice, remember, over this past weekend, I was telling everyone, be careful because Mars is in a quincunx with Uranus. At the same time, Mars was also in a square with Neptune. What does that mean? That means there's unpredictable violence, weapons being used, fires, danger, deaths, could be possible murders. So here, transit Mars, 5 degrees, was trining his natal moon. Remember what I said earlier. Trines are harmonious aspects. Yes, they are benefic aspects. However, they open the doors for you to be able to do something that comes much easier without any difficulty. That's why these are harmonious trines. They just made things happen so much easier. So this was aspecting his moon with the Uranus squaring his natal moon. This really it was like he had this surge of emotions out of nowhere, but under false pretenses, because don't forget, transit Neptune is also in a quincunx with his natal moon. That means what he thought was going on was not what was actually happening. A lot of misinterpretation going on an emotional level for him. He could have thought one thing was happening, but something completely different was going on. But nonetheless, making him react in a very violent, unexpected, crazy way. Let's go even deeper. And then I want to end this video because this is way too long for me. When I was looking at the compatibility between Nick and his father, Rob Reiner, something interesting I noticed. So Rob Reiner's natal Mars, Sun, and Mercury conjuncts Nick's Saturn. That creates a lot of frustrating energy. That could create a lot of violence, a lot of anger, could create a lot of abuse within the relationship. Nick's Venus is conjunct Rob's Saturn retrograde and Pluto retrograde. That could also make it very straining in terms of love and affection. He could feel like he's being manipulated. He could feel like his father was not being honest. Although his father, as any good father would do and try to be their best for their child. But Nick already had a predispositioned mental and emotional issue that also stemmed from past lives. He obviously came into this life to help heal that karma. But unless you're consciously aware, it's really challenging to do that. And you know what also really struck me is the fact that Rob Reiner's nodes are exactly conjunct within 1 degree orb Nick's nodes. What does that mean? That means that their relationship was karmic. I know this is going to be hard for some of you to understand, but they came into each other's lives to resolve some karmic issues from the past. Now, I'm not going to go any deeper than that, but I am going to say this. I hope that they, in some way, shape, or form, resolved some of the issues. Otherwise, it's very sad for the soul to have to repeat a lesson over and over again because it wasn't learned in the first place. But it was very shocking to me to see what a karmic connection these two had in each other's lives. These two owed each other something, needed to pay back each other in some way, shape, or form. It's unfortunate that it resulted in the death of Rob Reiner and his wife, but I will leave the rest up to you because I do not want to take this video any further and I really don't want to add any more content to this. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Wild just to see the deeper interpretation of what was going on and what was the root cause of all this to begin with. If you don't already know, I have a 30% off sale off of all my sessions going on now until January 1st, 2026. Head on to astrodevi.com or DM me at astrodevi333 where you could schedule your next session with me. I'll see y'all soon.